Hello everyone, Amy R here with Prairie Paper and Ink, and this is going to be my first video in a series of videos with a bunch of giveaways to celebrate hitting 60,000 subscribers on YouTube. So for today's video, I am using some Ellen Hutson products as they are sponsoring the giveaway today. All that info will be in my blog post. So to start off with, I pulled out the Mondo Magnolia Essentials by Ellen stamp set that I'd got quite some time ago when I'd fallen in love with it and hadn't had a chance to use it. So I decided to stamp it multiple times onto a piece of Canson XL watercolor paper because the coordinating die set for this stamp set has 3 dies, so you can actually cut out the 3 separate layers of this flower. So I decided to stamp it the 3 times, and the first 2 times I used white embossing powder, and I just used my anti-static powder tool first, inked up the stamp with Versamark ink, and then poured white embossing powder over it. And then the third one, I only wanted the center, so I didn't worry about getting embossing powder around the petals. And I stamped it and used copper embossing powder. So after I had everything coated with embossing powder, I melted it with my heat tool. And then once it was melted, I pulled out my little Daniel Smith watercolor palette and just kind of experimented. I didn't do anything fancy. I haven't used these much since I got them. I usually reach for the Daniel Smith dot charts because I have, more colors to play with. But I do happen to have several tubes that I've put into a little palette, but I only ended up using 2 colors to do these, and I used Quinacridone Rose and Opera Pink. And just kind of experimenting, I was adding, clean water with my paintbrush, and then I would pick up the color and kind of start from the center, and that was the Quinacridone Rose. And then I would get some of the Opera Pink and apply it on the other end and kind of pull it all together. So just really playing around, not a whole lot of thought to it. With the first one, even though I colored the petals on the inside, you're not really going to see them because I'm going to be die cutting that second one in the middle there and adhering it over top. But it also gave me a chance to kind of experiment a little bit. Plus, if you do end up, seeing if the card is on the side view or whatever, you do want to add a little bit of color. I also watercolored outside of the lines with all of these because I'm planning on die cutting and it doesn't die cut right up to the line. So I added color along the outside just to kind of finish it off a little bit more. So I let everything dry and then I went in with a second layer and I would use much more saturated color this time. So added all of that, let everything dry completely, and then now this is where I'm going to use the coordinating dies to die cut the pieces. So there's the main die that will cut out the whole large flower, and then the second die will cut out the center petals, which you could technically use as a second flower if you wanted. So it kind of gives you a little more bang for your buck, but I'm planning on layering all mine together. But I'm just getting them lined up with some washi tape to hold it in place when I run it through my die cut machine. And then the third die cuts out just the center, and this one cuts very close to the edges. So got them all lined up, and then I'm going to run this through my die cut machine and die cut everything. And then I decided to pop them all into place with a little bit of foam adhesive, just to pop them up and give them that little extra bit of dimension. So after I had done that, I decided to use some of the Essentials by Ellen Modern Graphics pattern paper. That's going to be for my card front. And then I also die cut a piece of vellum. And I just used one of the My Favorite Things A2 stitched rectangle stacks set 2 dies to die cut my vellum. And then I used the anti-static powder tool again and stamped the Hello sentiment from that same set. And then coated it with the copper embossing powder. Now I'm going to melt that with my heat tool, which doesn't take very long because it's vellum, so it melts really quickly. And then I had originally cut down the pattern paper to be just A2 sized, but then I changed my mind and I'm going to die cut it with one of the largest of the stitched rectangle dies, just because it gives it that nice stitched edge. You can't really see it so much in the video, but it just gives it a little extra something. And I also pulled out some white thread from my stash. I haven't used thread in forever. But I decided to pull it out and I think I have about 5 or 6 strands here and just wrapped it around that vellum. And then I'm going to tie it in a bow. So I always wrap that around and then I start my knot and then I just use my reverse tweezers to kind of hold that into place. It makes it a lot easier to form my bow, especially fiddling with this many strands of string. It kind of takes a little while. So once I was happy with how my bow looked, I can trim off those ends there. And then this is when I die cut that pattern paper. And then I decided to adhere the vellum to the pattern paper. The easiest thing to do was just use my tape runner, since this magnolia bloom is going to cover pretty much the entire thing. So I just applied adhesive where it's going to be completely covered so you can't see it. And then I applied little bits of that adhesive behind the sentiment, because same thing, you're not really going to be able to see it. So got the adhesive applied, and then I can pop that into place, and then I can pop my watercolored and die cut flower, again with some foam dimension, just to give it that little extra something. So got that into place, and then I pulled out some lily white sprinkles from my stash and adhered a couple of those onto the flower, and then a couple onto the card, and then couldn't stop there and I had to add a couple more just for a little extra bit of embellishment. So I got those popped into place, and then for my card base, it's just some heavyweight white cardstock that I had cut to 4 1/4 by 11, and I'd scored it at 5.5 inches, so it's a top folding A2 size card. And I used my anti-static powder tool again on the inside of the card and inked up another sentiment from that Mondo Magnolia stamp set. So ink that up with the Versamark ink, and then I'm going to use that same copper embossing powder again, so pour that over the sentiment, and then I'm going to melt that with my heat tool. And then I'm going to add the tape runner to the back of my card front so I can adhere that to my card. So I'm just going to go all around the perimeter of the card front with this, kind of being careful because this is just like lightweight paper. This is like 65-pound pattern paper. So going around the perimeter and then adding some adhesive to the center, and then I can pop that onto my card, and that finished it off. So as always, I will have a link below the video to my blog post, and you definitely want to check out my blog post. I will also have a coupon code for Ellen Hutson and a giveaway, so check that out below if you are interested, along with all the supplies used. I'll have all that info in my blog post, so check it out. Thank you all so much for watching, subscribing, thumbs upping, and commenting on my videos. I really appreciate it, and I will see you all very soon in the next one. Bye!